Surah Hud, inshallah, after salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. وأوحي إلى نوح أنه لن يؤمن من قومك إلا من قد آمن فلا تبتئس بما كانوا يفعلون واصنع الفلك بأعيننا ووحينا ولا تخاطبني في الذين ظلموا ولا تخاطبني في الذين ظلموا إنهم مغرقون ويصنع الفلك وكلما مر عليه من قومه سخروا منه قال إن تسخروا منا فإنا نسخر منكم كما تسخرون فسوف تعلمون من يأتيه عذاب يخزيه ويحل عليه عذاب مقيم حتى إذا جاء أمرنا وفارت النور قل نحمل فيها من كل زوجين اثنين قل نحمل فيها من كل زوجين اثنين وأهلك إلا من سبق عليه القول ومن آمن وما آمن معه إلا قليل وما آمن معه إلا قليل وقال اركبوا فيها بسم الله وقال اركبوا فيها بسم الله مجريها وقال اركبوا فيها بسم الله مجرها ومرساها إن ربي لغفور رحيم صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل وسلم وزد وبارك على رسول الله وآله الأطهار على رسول الله وآله الأطهار صلوات.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين. Could I ask you kindly to move forward so we won't be all spread out? If you can, please move forward. صل على محمد وآل محمد. Please forgive me, I'm going to repeat almost every night. I may repeat the same announcements just to remind you that the Ashura program at noon, there is a majlis for women only. At 8 o'clock, there is a program for youth. And then the English program is in this room, and then the Arabic program is in the other room. I also ask you kindly to support the Ashura program. Without your support, we cannot do this. You can do, then we're talking about financial support, we're talking about volunteering, we're talking about you bringing friends and relatives with you to make the program successful, inshallah. And at the back of every bench, there is a cue card, I believe, code rather, and you can donate that way, or you can talk to the office. You like to talk to me as well. We always could use as sponsors for the program. Thank you. One more thing I want to bring to your attention. Islamic House of Wisdom is always busy trying to serve the community as much as possible. They are building a gymnasium on the land here to the north. Any support for that would be appreciated. If you'd like to learn more, please check with the office, or you can talk to me afterward. Thank you so much. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd just like you to recite the Fatiha. My uncle in Lebanon passed away today at the age of 84. He was a poet, a writer, an author, an educator, a religious leader, and a community leader. So I ask you kindly to keep us in your prayers and to recite Surah Al-Fatiha عن روحه روح أرواحكم المؤمنين جميعا بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. And now we're going to continue with the discussion with our brother Sayyid Hussain AlNashed بعد الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
سورة المباركة الفاتحة. بسم الله أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين خاتم النبيين سيدنا وسيد الأولين والآخرين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتخبين المنتجبين المظلومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. Let's have a second salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. And the third of our salawat with the loudest of your voices to give condolences to the heart of the awaited Savior Al-Mahdi. Ajjalallah ta'ala faraja sharif. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Amma ba'd, my respected brothers and sisters, my elders and learned scholars, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Azam Allahu ujurana wa ujurakum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala compensate each and every one of us for the sorrow and grief which we will be feeling throughout these nights of Muharram al-Haram. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept all that we do with the best of acceptance. Ilahi al-Haqi Ameen. Two things. One, just a correction, not a Sayyid, so regular Joe. The second thing is that I'm not one to really ask for people to give money to mosques and stuff like that, but I do strongly encourage in the month of Muharram that you give, because this is really the month of Nusra. And this month is the time when Imam Hussain AlNashed called out time and again, is there anybody who can support this cause, right? And ultimately, we're not giving to the House of Wisdom, we're not giving to Shaykh Ilahi, we're not giving to me or to anybody else who is part of the management in this center. Ultimately, you're giving to the cause, which is Ihya Dhikra Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah, and that is to relive the legacy and the memory of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah. And whatever you give today, I can guarantee you will find waiting for you on that day when none shall avail us except the shafa'ah of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Sallu ala al-Habib al-Mustafa. Continuing where we left off yesterday, that Islam has become heavily politicized. It's more about politics, it's more about people control than it is about rituals which ultimately foster a relationship between the servant and the master, meaning between us and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we can see this when we analyze the different leadership within Islam, which is often a topic that is somewhat, of a taboo to discuss, because, with the whole idea of Sunni Shia unity, etc., which we are for. However, you cannot paint a brush over historical facts and expect us to move along, all hunky-dory and life is full of roses, but we're unable to get to the root cause of the issues that have set back the Muslim community. Now, you might be thinking, well, what kind of setback is there for the Muslim community? Some of us might be living in America, enjoying life, alhamdulillah, we've got our 9-to-5s, we've got health insurance, we've got cars, we've got homes, family, kids, whole 9 yards. So really, what's so wrong with this Muslim community? Well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that there was a time when we were the best community. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Kuntum khayr ummatan ukhrijat lin-nas ta'muruna bil-ma'ruf wa tanhawna 'anil munkar. You used to be the best of mankind based on the fact that you would enjoin good and forbid evil. And when we look at the history of, society and civilization, we realize, if you're really being unbiased, you realize that Muslims were actually at the peak. That Islam actually is the best thing to happen to mankind. Not just because, we believe Rasulullah is our prophet. Rasulullah is not our prophet. He is God's messenger. He's not Rasul al-Arab. He's not Rasul al-Shia. He's not Rasul al-Sunnah. He is Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And therefore this rahmatu insaniya which Allah sent really and truly did elevate mankind. He elevated the status of a woman from being, in the eastern part of the world, buried at birth, right, for fear of shame that will come down the line, right? Then on the other hand, you've got in the Western civilized, or rather at the time it was uncivilized because they call it dark ages. Ironically, the Muslim history has never had dark ages. We've had the golden age of Islam, right? So humanity was going through a very aggressive phase. As Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen describes in the khutbah of Fadak, she says, you, mankind, were at the very edge of Jahannam. There was no goodness left in humanity. Gladiator rings in Rome where humans will barbarically butcher at one another and the rest of us will cheer and jeer, Basically, if you want to imagine a world without Islam, imagine gladiators and everybody else is sitting there with their TikToks and Instagram and they're posting and it's just normal. Whereas today, humanity's standard that when we see distressing images of just a car accident, if we see the distressful image, we quickly move on. A lot of people, especially with what's going on in Gaza, right? They say, oh my God, I can't do this anymore. I can't keep resharing this. I can't keep posting. This is too barbaric. This is too inhumane. And it's not just Muslims saying it, it's all people saying it. But imagine in just less than half a millennia ago, we would have been like, oh, cool, look at his intestines hanging out. That was humanity. Those were the things that shaped us. Our entertainment was to be barbaric. We were completely devoured of rahmah. We did not show mercy to our enemies. In Arabia, it was customary that if I defeat my opponent, I mutilate their body or I dig up and desecrate the graves of their loved ones. Like, we were so fickle as people. We just wanted to hurt each other all the time. And Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen talks about this. She says, you were on shaqafa, like literally an inch away from falling into hell. And there was no saving you. Until Allah saved you with my Father, the mercy unto mankind. He took you, educated you, elevated you. And now today, when He is laid to rest, you turn against His family and you treat us without mercy? This is essentially what she's saying to the companions of the Prophet in Khutbat Fadak. You had nothing, we gave you everything. And now you turn against us. O Ansar, where are you from the letters you once wrote to my father, beckoning him to come to Medina? You were able to help my father, then what holds you from supporting me? Is it because you became fat from Islam? No jokes or anything, but Sayyidah Zahra is not here talking about obesity. She's talking that you were people that couldn't find food. Arabia, today we have azayim all the time, obviously, butchering, slaughtering. But back in the day, if all you had were 1-2 sheep, you're not going to kill them. That's where your milk comes from. That's where you make your butter, your yogurt. That's where you get your wool to make your clothes, your carpet, your tent. You're not going to kill that. So we were vegans for most of the time. But when Rasulullah came and he established this Muslim Ummah, which was built on collective community well-being, where we together would pitch in and give khums and zakat and sadaqah to one another. That's what Islam encouraged us to do. It encouraged us to think collectively, to work collectively, to care for each other. It strengthened bonds between father and child, husband and wife, neighbors. Pray for 7 neighbors before you pray for your home, Sayyidat Nisa al-Alameen. These beautiful etiquettes, where do they stem from in Islam? Where do we find their examples? We do not find it in the Khalifas. The Khalifas, when we read the history of Islam, you can take some real fancy stories about how they got angry and did certain things, but you don't find, and this is not to make mockery or to make light of anything, because you see, the tragedy is that as a consequence of the incompetence of these Khalifas, Imam Hussain was killed in Karbala. Yazid didn't just come into power by luck or by election or by vote. Yazid was placed into power by the policies of the first, second and third Khalifa. They quite literally handed over the reins to Bani Umayyah. A people whom Rasulullah said, if you see them, curse them. What do we say in the ziyarah of Sayyid al-Shuhada? Allahumma inna hadha yawmun tabarrakat bihi Banu Umayyah wa ala Ziyad wa ibn akilat al-akbad al-la'in ibn al-la'in على لسان نبيك في كل موقف وموطن وقف فيه نبيك رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعنة. Oh Allah, this is a day in which the enemies of Islam took it to be Eid, because they finally accomplished the killing of Muhammad's family. They couldn't do it when he was alive. They couldn't avenge their ancestors in Badr. They couldn't avenge their ancestors in Uhud, in Hunayn. So they avenged later on, after changing the policies of the religion. Now they can do what they want. Oh Allah, this is a day in which they rejoiced for their killing of Imam Hussain. The family tree of Bani Umayyah and the family of Banu Ziyad. And the son of the one who ate the liver of Hamza, meaning Hind, the wife of Abu Sufyan, ate the liver of Hamza. Her son is Muawiyah, and his son is Yazid la'natullahi alayhi. The killer and the eater of the livers, he whom your prophet cursed him and his people in every land and in every instance that Rasulullah would move from a sitting position to a standing position. That's qawl al-Imam al-Ma'soom. That every time Rasulullah stood up, he would send la'na on Banu Umayyah. He would say, oh Allah, curse that wretched tree, ash-shajaratul mal'una. Every time, yet ironically today when we send la'na on the killers of the Ahlul Bayt, we're fitna mongers. Go figure. When I do what Rasulullah did to support Ahlul Bayt, to remind the Muslim Ummah that your leadership, not the leadership that some people who were politically inclined elected some 1,400 years ago, but the leadership which Allah nominated was killed by people for a bunch of poxy dollars that today we actually live a much better life than them. None of the Khalifas could ever get on a Delta airline flight. You and I, we do, right? We get Delta, we travel the world in a couple of hours. We're actually living a life better than them. But for that poxy life that they had, that temporary dunya enjoyment, they sold their akhirah. They killed the Prophet's family just so that they can rule for a number of years. And that's why the irony, when you read Bukhari, you will find that the first Khalifa, when he died, what were his final words on his grave? According to Aisha, his daughter, she says, my father was weeping, saying, Mali wa Fatima. What the hell do I have to do with Fatima? Why did I attack her home? Why? Because he realized death is here. And Fatima, Abu Bakr sent many attempts, according to Bukhari, to ask for her forgiveness for having attacked her door and usurped her rights and causing her to miscarry her child. And then Aisha tells us in Sahih Bukhari, she says, Fatima did not speak to my father or Umar ibn Khattab for 6 months, not for any other reason except كانت قاضبة عليهم. She wasn't upset with them, she was enraged with them. And the irony is, if you turn just 3 pages after that hadith, you will find a hadith again from Aisha herself that says, قال رسول الله يرضى الله لرضا فاطمة ويغضب لغضبها. Allah is only pleased when Fatima is pleased and becomes angry at the one who angers Fatima. And yet, ironically, we can't talk about it. It's kind of like the Holocaust, you know. You can kill all the Palestinians, we can't talk about the Jews. That lets you know who's in power. When in these United States, just a few weeks ago, they pass a law in which I can criticize my own government due to the freedom of speech and the God-given right that we have and we enjoy in this country, but we can't talk talk about Israel. So that lets you know who controls my government in these United States. In the same way, Habibi, when the Quran al-Kareem is telling you who is your Imam and is abundantly clear, it's crystal cut, yet the Imam at the masjid is not telling you anything about the Prophet, nothing about the Ahlul Bayt, and all he's doing is praising and glorifying those who killed them and telling you Ashab al-Rasul, Ashab al-Rasul, Ashab al-Rasul, that lets you know who's in power. Okay? Moving on. Let's move on with the salawat ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. To the world, it wasn't so crystal clear that those who are in power are completely devoid of any morality, any religiosity. Because see, in public, they will tell you what you want. Behind closed doors, they do something different. Kind of like American presidents. When it comes to elections, we'll tell you, oh, we'll do anything we want. You know, Sleepy Joe comes over here, tells the Muslims, I'm all for the Muslim community, etc., etc. We're still waiting for him to do one thing about Gaza, nothing. So they'll tell you, they'll give you all these candy words. That's just humans. We're very fickle. We lie to our eyes, but we believe our ears, right? So there was no way to expose these so-called Khalifas because it was a very close circle. You're either in that circle or you're not in that circle. It was one Imam through patience and perseverance that exposed all the fallacies and the hypocrisy of those who usurped the rights of Rasulullah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That Imam, unfortunately, though he made all the secrets known to us, his life is very secretive to us. In the sense that we don't read much about him, we don't honor him much, we don't study him much, we don't talk about him enough. He is the firstborn in the house of Ali and Fatima, and the first of Sayyidi Shababi Ahl al-Jannah. An Imam who Rasulullah described, he said, he shall have my personality and my looks. His name is Al-Imam Al-Hassan ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhim afdal as-salatu was-salam. Let us honor them with the loudest of our salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The life of Imam Al-Hassan Al-Mujtaba alayhi salamullah is a life that, although there is much written about it, it is not a life that we discuss enough. And though in itself it is problematic, it is not the be-all, end-all of the problem. The problem is that when we don't talk about this Imam, and we don't understand this Imam, we will end up, and I mean all the Imams by the way, all 12 Imams, if we just focus on Amir al-Mu'mineen because it's Shahr Ramadan and we're already there and we're in the Jami' and it's of course Imam Ali, as my Ba'al-Bak boys say, right? Apparently no one can love him as much as they can, but that's a story for a different day. But Imam Ali, we love him, we know his stories, we know everything about him, okay. And then Imam Hassan disappears. And then Imam Hussain, because we have the month of Muharram, we have 10 nights, we know almost everything about him. I'd also like to make a point, an argument that we really don't know anything about Imam al-Hussein because we only talk about Imam al-Hussein on a matter of hours of his life. Yawm Ashura, that's it. He was 57 when he was in Karbala. 57 years of his life we talk about just less than 4 hours of the life of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salamullah. When we don't analyze and when we don't study the lives of the Imams, it essentially means one thing. Though we outwardly do not speak it, we don't vocalize it, but the reality that takes place will be the following. That we may think we're helping the Imam's cause, but in reality, we are the biggest hindrance in the Imam's way. This is a reality. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran al-Kareem, in one ayah, He says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, you complain about your torment while you are the reason for it. What does that mean? It means, let's put it this way, in a way that can kind of make sense to us today, right? I can complain all day long about pollution, okay? I think I'm going to shoot myself in the foot with this one, right? I complain about pollution all day, and then I'm driving a 5.7 Hemi while I'm talking to my boy in the car, and I'm, man, you know, so much pollution going on in the, right? I'm part of the problem. I say there's a problem, but I'm the reason that problem exists because I'm a consumer. I sit there and I say, Ya Allah, what's going on with Gaza? You know, all this horrible stuff that's happening in Gaza. Why doesn't anybody do anything to stop it? And then pull out a can of Coca-Cola and I look at kids and I'm seeing them being so disrespectful to their parents, and I'm like, yo, what's up with this next generation, man? They're so rude. And then my dad's next to me and I'm like, right? So we become the problem and we're complaining about the problem, but for whatever reason we think that we're not part of that problem. Okay? I'll give you a quick demonstration. I've seen this done in a classroom before. Everybody put your hand up. Everybody put your hand up. Okay. Now everybody put your hand up higher. As high as you can. Could you have not put it up that high right at the very beginning? You could have, right? When I said put your hand up. But we don't put in 100%. That's the thing with human beings. You could have easily just gone, right? That's up. When I say put your hand up, that's up. We were right here. Then it was like, put your hand all the way up. Come on now, you can do it. Oh, it's all the way up. We need someone to tell us. That's the reality. We need someone to tell us. On a side note, the big masjid, I always get that masjid and the Ghazwini masjid mixed up because they sound very much the same. But the big one on Ford Road, right? Whenever I would go there, like I would pray Dhuhr at work, normally like in the back of the truck, right? And then Asr, I would just leave until I get to the Jama'. But when I get to the Jama', I notice that, I don't know how the ladies' side of it is, but the men's side, sometimes, you know, them washrooms be nasty, right? Like real nasty. But we don't do that in our own house, right? But we do that in Allah's house, right? In the masjid. We don't clean up after ourselves. So I'm sitting there, you know, using the restroom, and I'm thinking to myself, man, because I had to walk into 1, 2, 3, they're all nasty, and I walked into the disabled one, and that one's the only clean one. And I'm sitting there just, you know, having these thoughts in my mind, you know, can we come up with a system, like how to keep the toilets clean and problem solving and everything. And while I'm doing that, I'm washing my hands and I hear someone walk in. Obviously you don't care, you're not going to turn around, right? But then I'm hearing like buckets and water being splashed on the floor. I was like, oh, the cleaner is here, that's nice. And I turn around and it's actually one of my very dear brothers and good friends, Mehdi Shukr, right? And I see Mehdi cleaning the toilets. And at that moment, I just stopped and I looked at him. I said, you know, Mehdi, you don't realize this, but right now you just made me realize the exact reason why Imam Mehdi's not here. He said, what do you mean? I said, I could have cleaned the restroom. I could have. I saw the problem. I could have easily just, but I was like, you know, brother, right? It's just nasty, right? And I didn't want to touch it. And Mehdi's not even like the cleaner at the Jama'. He just saw it and he went and did it. And I said to him, I said, Mehdi, you know what? I used to always think who comes and cleans the toilets? And then when I leave, Mehdi comes and cleans the toilets. In real life, we see all that nastiness happening in life and we're asking ourselves, when is Mehdi going to come and clean it? Right? So the idea is that we could be part of the solution or we could be part of the problem. Or we could even be worse. Imam Ali alayhi salam Allah, he says you can be like donkey's milk. Because donkey's milk, when humans drink it, it just goes right through us. There's no benefit, there's no harm. It doesn't do you no good, it doesn't do you no bad. So the Imam tells the Muslims, he says, don't be like donkey's milk. That you're neither for good nor for bad, you're just living. Right? Sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. So nobody saw what these Khalifas were doing behind closed doors. Everybody thought it's hunky-dory, hunky-dory, hunky-dory. Then Imam Hassan AlMujtaba comes along. When Imam Hassan AlMujtaba comes along, people think that the Imam just immediately went and made a peace treaty with Muawiyah. No, there were actually 3 battles between Imam Hassan and Muawiyah lanatullah alayhi. And Imam Hassan alayhi salam Allah, the only reason he was losing those battles was because he's people that were around him were morally bankrupt. Muawiyah would send them money in the night, and they would turn against Imam Hassan in the day. In fact, Imam Hassan alayhi salamullah was so mistreated by his followers that whilst he was in salah, a group of his followers stole the musalla from beneath his feet. Can you imagine? Now let me show you how morally corrupt the Muslim world was under the government of the first three, because again, we're still in the first 40 years after Rasulullah passed away. We had an Ummah of Rasulullah that for 13 years was patient under torture, under torment, under duress. They didn't fight in the first 13 years. The first battle took place is the Battle of Badr in the 13th year. Okay, so the first 13 years, the first 10 Rasulullah is in Mecca. The Muslims are being persecuted. Mind you, these Muslims were not affluent people. They were broke like you and me, right? They were people who didn't have anything. Rasulullah came and said to them, hey, I know you don't have nothing, but if you pray, you're going to go to Jannah. And God's going to give you everything. But hey, if you pray, I know your boss right now doesn't like you much in his life, making it difficult for you, right? But if you start to pray, there's a very likelihood he's going to torture you even more. In fact, he might even kill you. And the people didn't care to die. Ammar ibn Yasir, his mother is in front of him, being tied 4 limbs to 4 different animals, made to run in different direction. His mum's body is torn to 4 pieces, not by swords, by being pulled apart. And Ammar ibn Yasir only has to do one thing to save his mother. He just has to say that Allah is not God. The idols are God. That's all he needed to do. He didn't need to go kill anybody. He didn't need to trample the body of anybody. He didn't need to cut anybody's head off. He didn't need to do anything that barbaric, not even remotely. All he had to say is, God doesn't exist. The idols are the true gods. And they killed his mother in front of him. And he said, there is only one true God. That God is Allah. They say to him, we're going to kill your father. They kill his father in front of him. He says, there's only one true God, and that God is Allah. They said to him, Ammar, big boy thing, yeah? Okay. You think you can handle all this? Fine. Guess what? We're not going to kill you. Now we're going to do the same thing to every other Muslim person. We're going to kill their parents in front of their eyes. We don't care if they say, Hubal is God. No, we're going to keep doing this until you say, Hubal is God. Ammar looked at the people around him and he saw fear in their eyes and he said, I can't put them through this. My family was willing to die. So Ammar, in a moment, to save the lives of the other Muslims, and under that immense type of duress and pressure, he says, the idols are gods and there is no Allah. And all those Muslims that day were saved. But Ammar, when Rasulullah came to him, the Prophet himself began to cry so much that his body shook. You know when you see someone crying and their shoulders are bouncing up and down? When Rasulullah saw how heartbroken Ammar was, Rasulullah was weeping. Rasulullah was trying to consolidate his heart. He was saying to him, don't worry Ammar, it's okay, they're in Jannah now. Ammar said, by Allah, I do not weep over my parents. I know they're in Jannah. Ya Rasulullah, I'm devastated because I said God is not real. That's how much they cared. That's how much they cared. Today, we have our children, we say to him, Baba, get up and Salli Fajr. Yeah, Baba, I already prayed it. When you liar, it's not even Fajr time yet. But then we had a people that were willing to suffer for this religion because it was all about the spiritual. There was nothing political at that time. Why? Because there wasn't even a khilafah. There was nothing for people to fight over. Allah sends the ayah of taqiyya in this incident. He says, Ya Rasulullah, tell Ammar, when he said that I'm not real, did he believe it in his heart or did his tongue just say it? Ammar says, my heart never for a second wavered. Firm belief in Allah. But my tongue spoke it to save the lives of others. the ayah of the Quran comes down, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and as for those who are under duress, say that which they don't want to say, then there is no haraj on them. Allah shall not hold it against them. As long as their heart was sound, tell Ammar, there's no apology that is required from him. To moving forward only 50 years after that incident, you have a man who stabs at the son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, kicks and spits at him. And when he was asked, what did Yazid promise you for what you did to Imam al-Hussain? He said, he promised me 3 dates. And I don't mean dates to the movie, I mean dates like tamar. 3 dates to stab the son of Rasulullah. 3 dates to parade the daughters of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as if they were some random women. That's where Islam went to where it is. So Imam al-Hassan alayhi salamullah realizes that his army is being bought out by Muawiyah very cheaply. And that informed the Imam that, hey, these people cannot make any differentiation between who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed. Something has to happen where we expose the other side and show them for their true face. Enter the peace treaty of Al-Imam Al-Hassan Al-Mujtaba alayhi salamullah, one of the greatest political moves that safeguarded the religion of La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. In his honor, sallu ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. In a world where everything was being documented, Muawiyah la'natullah alayhi was very smart. What was he doing? He was paying people to document and fabricate new ahadith. In a world where everything was documented and the Shia that were being oppressed did not have narrative, neither was their narrative being documented. As we're aware, the first Khalifa burnt a lot of the hadith books. The second had no interest in even gathering. Third, as we said yesterday, he was more letting Marwan do the ruling while he was in the passenger seat. But when Muawiyah came, Muawiyah started this fabrication of a hadith where he would pay people hefty sums to fabricate hadiths. And therefore, it became part of the civilization that everything is documented now. The hadith is documented, ledgers are documented, everything is documented. Anything that pertains to the government is documented. So Imam al-Hassan alayhi salamullah enters a peace treaty. Number one, the reason why the Imam alayhi salamullah did not leave it to a stalemate is because a stalemate is not necessarily going to document what the intention of the opposition is. But a peace treaty signed by both parties and enters legislation, which means it will be documented, and in fact it survived until this age, hence why we know about this particular document. So by entering into a peace treaty, the Imam alayhi salamullah, he knew that Muawiyah is not going to stand by these terms and conditions because he already knows how morally corrupt and bankrupt Muawiyah is. But the Imam needs something to be documented, and hence a peace treaty is signed. What was documented in that peace treaty? The Imam alayhi salamullah puts certain grievances that he has as well as certain requests that he has. The grievances, even though they don't resolve anything, but what they do is that they historically document and show that Muawiyah accepted the status quo, meaning the dhulm and the injustice which was being meted out against the Shia of Ali ibn Abi Talib or anybody that wanted to join Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah. Today our brothers from other schools of thoughts come up to us and say, well, if the other guys were so bad and Ali was so good, why did people not just join Ali ibn Abi Talib? Well, that question, had it not been for the treaty of Imam Hassan, would forever remain to be a baffling one because there is no answer to it. But the answer to it is that in the treaty of Imam al-Hassan, which was documented in the very government of the enemies, is that Imam al-Hassan alayhi salamullah made a request of Muawiyah to backdate all the zakat and khums that was being held from anyone who was affiliated with Ali ibn Abi Talib. In those exact words, the Imam says, backdate all the khums and zakat which you have been withholding from the time of the first till now, which you have been withholding from anyone who associated himself with Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salamullah. Which means there was political pressure against the people not to side with Ali ibn Abi Talib. Which means the follow-up question, the inevitable, yes, you guessed it, why are you paying people and withholding money if you are the legitimate Khalifa? Why would you go through that hassle? Why would you oppress a people who are just like you that say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah? There was no Sunni and Shia before. So why is it now that only those who affiliate with Ali ibn Abi Talib, who you tell me is the homeboy, because all the Sahaba are friends, why is it that anyone that supported Ali for over 40 years, you withheld from them any kind of financial support? It kind of reminds me of the African Americans in this country, right? For a very long time, they had no access to anything that this government would give, albeit that the government was built on their backs. Majority of the land was owned by Shia farmers. Majority of the supporters of Imam Ali alayhi salamullah were also affluent, but they lost everything due to the support of the Imam. So Imam Hassan alayhi salamullah ensures that this becomes documented. That people were not leaving Ali ibn Abi Talib because they found intellect elsewhere or they found logic elsewhere. No. Is that they couldn't find a sustainable lifestyle supporting Ali ibn Abi Talib. It was a life of poverty. And that's why only the khullas, only those who truly had sold their share of the dunya, never once abandoned Amir al-Mu'mineen Ali ibn Abi Talib. Whereas those who were in extreme poverty, it was very easy to buy them out because they didn't know money. And by the way, just a FYI, if you look back at the history of Lebanon, and you look at the history of Iran, and you look at the history of Damascus, Syria, specifically the Shia regions, and you look at the history of Iraq, and you don't need to go too far. You just got to go back 180 years. That's all you got to do. Just go 180 years. And you will find that even until then, not even 180 years, 40 years ago is when Ayatollah Khomeini came. That was the kind of the last. The Shias were living the most despicable life. We were the shanty towns. Under even the Muslim governments of today, we were the shanty towns. In Afghanistan, the Hazara, it wasn't a crime to rape a Hazara, a Shia Hazara. It wasn't a crime because they were considered not to have any dignity. It wasn't a crime for you to kill a Shia and take his home because it was considered killing a kafir and taking his property as war booty, ghanima. This is just until recently, before the USSR even fell apart. In Lebanon, in Iran, the Shias had to have the lowest jobs. It's only with the Islamic Revolution that our lot has changed. And I know some people are not pro-Islamic Revolution, you don't have to be. But at the same time, don't be so disrespectful to the one who taught you dignity. Don't be disrespectful to the one who honored you and honored your religion and gave you feet to stand upon. Amir al-Mu'mineen teaches us, he says, do not insult the one who taught you how to speak. Before the Islamic Revolution, we as a Shia people could not have these majalis openly. Just a FYI. Go read your history. In every part of the world, in Iraq, Saddam's only been gone since 2003, 35 years under Saddam's rule. My ancestors and your ancestors, for those who are from that region of the world, you'll know if you sat down and spoke to them like I did, that our ancestors would have a majlis in silence. They would whisper to one another the maqtal. And the moment they heard Saddam's agents at the door, they would start playing music and everybody gets up and everybody's dancing, pretending that the reason we were gathered is for a dance party. Because if we were suspected of upholding the majalis and the dhikr of Karbala, then it would be an automatic execution for all parties involved. In Russia, the Shia to this very day, when they finish their majlis, at the very end of the majlis, they dim the lights, the Radud whispers the Latmiya, and everybody in the male section, they will open one button, they'll put their hand, and then they will do Latam like this. And when you ask them, why do you do that? They say, this is a salute to our ancestors who lived under the USSR, where the Wilaya of the Ahlul Bayt was a crime. So it's not just the first guys that wanted us out. Anybody who saw Ali's Adala doesn't want Ali's Adala, because it's always a threat to their injustice. And they would persecute and kill the Shia in the USSR. Today's Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, all these other places. And they would kill them. So they would do exactly what we would do in Saddam's time. They'll have a majlis in the basement, and whenever they heard the KGB was outside, they would all run back upstairs, and everybody's dancing and they're having a party. Can you imagine? Can you imagine after 9/11, all Muslims in this country had to hide the fact that they pray 5 times a day? And as soon as someone came in with an AR-15, you had to take off your hijab and start dancing and pretend that you weren't praying. Can you imagine? And then only some 20 years after that, someone comes up to you and says, hey, why are you talking about the days you were oppressed? You're creating fitna in the community. Don't talk about how I treated you. We need to be united right now. Doesn't it make you think? How our narrative, when we're oppressed, we can't speak it. In a land where we have freedom of right, we cannot speak it. Amongst ourselves, we cannot speak it. So we're not really living any different to the time that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam left the Ummah in. That the religion has become very political. Very, very political. You can't talk about the Madhlumiyya of Fatima al-Zahra for political reasons. You can't mention people by name for political reasons. So where is the spiritual aspect? Where is the connect? Allah knows best. So Imam Hassan alayhi salamullah, he exposes Bani Umayyah, because he knows that Muawiyah is not going to agree to any of these terms and conditions. But he still writes them so that they be documented in history, and that future generations will not blame the Shia of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salamullah for being, incompetent. No, we were very competent in preserving our deen, because there was divine guidance. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. They wished to extinguish the light of Allah with their mouths, meaning their hadiths, but Allah is too defiant to allow His remembrance to be eradicated. We sent down this remembrance and we shall preserve it. And therefore, when Imam al-Hassan alayhi salamullah signs this peace treaty, and Muawiyah, as soon as he has solidified his position of power, he takes the peace treaty of Imam Hassan alayhi salamullah and he tears it up, and then he looks at the people and he says, here are the words of your Imam beneath my feet. Here are the words of your Imam beneath my feet. By Allah, I did not fight you so that you pray. Nor did I fight you to teach you the rules of Siyam and Hajj. You can find this in Bukhari. You can find this in any Sunni book you pick up. This was the first khutbah by Amir al-Mu'mineen Muawiyah radiyallahu anhu. Jesus Christ. I do not fight you so that you pray. Is there a statement more concrete that religion is no more about spirituality than this? That our deen was hijacked by a bunch of corrupt politicians?